Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it too. I'm going to have a quick chat today with you about patch 3.7 and particularly about some of the things that are going on in 3.7. There were some balances that occurred that I was pretty surprised by, and you probably were too. The E25 notably just jumped up a tremendous amount of penetration in terms of its shells. The AP and the APCR shells have swapped places. So I'll show you the E25, good old E25. The AP shells have been replaced by APCR shells, and the APCR shells have been replaced by heat shells. And with that has come a huge upgrade in penetration values. Your APCR now goes 194 and your heat goes 250. Now this is not actually that different to say the, where are we? What am I looking for here? What am I doing? The Type 62. Type 62 has very, very similar numbers. You can see there on its heat, but it only has 145 on its AP. The E75, out of the blue, has jumped from that 150 number on its AP to 195 on its APCR. Now, I guess that's a little more in keeping with the numbers you get on a standard TD at this tier. For instance, like the T25AT, which on its tier 8 gun has 198mm of pen on its AP and 245 on its APCR. Now, it's interesting, I didn't pick that by accident, the T25AT. I picked that for a very particular reason, because it also underwent a bit of a buff. The T25AT actually picked up a huge buff. The front armor went from 88mm to 120mm. And it's already sloped. And basically what that means is that for a tank that's like the Dracula, if you're firing AP at the T25AT frontally, the only part that's going to be pennable is the driver's hatch, which you can see just there to the right side of the gun as we're looking at it now, with AP and maybe the hatch on top. But if they're using the gun depression and they're on top of a hill or a little rise, that very, very steeply angled upper glacis is going to turn into a big auto bounce zone. So it's been a huge winner from the patch. And I'm going to redo a video on that because that's really strengthened the ability of this tank to be a bully to lower tier tanks and not take pens, and to force anyone in a tank of the same tier to just about must have Pramo to pen, which is a big thing for a tank destroyer like this that relies so much on speed, agility, and ambush. To then have the ability to bounce a few shots really moves it up the chain of command. The other big winner for me was obviously the T-34. This thing I thought was brilliant. It was already a really good tank, and I've got the Murica version going on there. Look at the size of this thing, by the way. That's a big tank. It's a mutant. It's called the Mutant on PC for a bloody good reason. Bit squat there, but it's not a squat tank at all. I mean, you can see how small the T-32 is. And if we have a look at another tank like the IS-6, have a look how low down that thing is, and have a look at this. It is incredibly massive, hey? But the T-34, back to what we were talking about. Don't get moved along too much. It underwent a whole heap of changes. Basically, you're looking at a hit point increase of 200 hit points, which is significant. The E25 picked up 30 hit points, which is neither here nor there. That's like just meh, doesn't matter. But the big changes for that was the penetration. T-34 already had amazing penetration, right? But it got 200 hit points. It picked up another 3.1 degrees of traverse, which is significant again. That's like a 10% buff to traverse. More than 10%, it's like 15%, which is a big, big number, from 22.95 to 26.07. The view range, again, went up by 10% to 240 meters unbuffed. And the reload time, it dropped a full second on its reload. And the dispersion ratio on the move of traverse was also decreased. Now, I already liked this tank. I like it a whole lot more now You can see 5.37 rounds a minute is better on the gun. The penetration numbers are always glorious. 248 and 297 on your Tier 9 120mm, the T53A1. And now your dispersion is down to 0.310. The traverse numbers are just brilliant. Really, really, really good. I'm so impressed with how the tank performs now. I just can't get enough of it. I'm really, really impressed with it. 30 degrees per second, 31 degrees nearly of traverse once you get all the buffs going. So I'm going to be driving that a fair bit. The Glacial got a few buffs and such, and that was good. The big funny one was the M60 that they Swiss Cheese will rename Grump Chat to something along the lines of they nerfed the M60, they nerfed my M60 the bastards, or something like that. Wargaming nerfed my M60. So it's a little bit of salt in the wound for the loyal people, but you know, there you go. That's the highs and lows of tanking for you. Apart from that, apart from the balance changes to things, which is obviously very important. They improved the hit points of a lot of the lower tier tanks, like the tier 1s and that, just to make the whole overall gameplay and experience better, which, I mean, I think is fair enough. It's going to be a bit of a negative for guys who drive overpowered lower tier tanks like the Keniotsu, because it didn't receive a hit point buff and it already had quite low hit points. So that's important to remember. It's the other one is that the Blaze got a buff. Like, I wouldn't touch it still. And the Glacial 112, they placed the fuel tanks in the wrong position, and it was absolutely changed. And they've changed the whole stuff about tournaments. If you want to get involved in that, that is excellent. You can get involved with that. The tournament updates will now require tickets and all kinds of things, which is very, very cool. The BDR was completely reworked. Let's have a look at the BDR. That was hilarious. No, that's the wrong one. BDR. So this, you might remember, this crazy looking Duplo kind of mofo tank was a bit of an issue because when it was released, it had the PC stats on it. So you had like 420 view range, and you had a gun that fired the lower tier gun. It's now back to 10.9 rounds a minute, but it was at like 20 rounds a minute, 19 rounds a minute. You basically had 3,180 rounds a minute. So you wouldn't run the top tier gun, you just run that one. And that's obviously changed now. So that's a huge difference. But they buffed the hit points on it while they took away those obviously overpowered parts. They improved the dispersion on the move ratios. They improved the mobility of the tank so it gets better ground resistance stats. They obviously changed the view range down, which was important. I mean, the reload time on the old gun was twice as fast as it should have been. It was at 4.2 and it's now at 8.8. And they have various numbers that they use for, like 75mm guns will have X amount of reload time on a heavy, and it cannot go below that. It's the same deal. Like, there's a reason all the 150mm guns hit for 640. That's because what a 150mm gun will hit for is 640, and there's a reason that a 120mm gun or a 130mm gun will hit for 460. And those numbers are kind of hard coded. So when you've got a gun that's 75mm and is firing every 4.2 seconds, that is broken. It is not intentional. It was never meant to be intentional. That's fair enough. They dropped the view range on all of it, which was pretty bloody important. And they decreased the aim time on the 90mm gun, which is the gun that everyone should be using on this tank now. Make no mistakes. 8 rounds a minute, 225 alpha, just Jim Dandy. There you go. So that's pretty much where it's at for patch 3.6. Was it 3.6 or 3.7? 3.7. So many things. So many things going on in the world at the moment. You might not know this also, but in training rooms, they've added the total hit points of both teams as an actual icon at the top if you're looking at it as a spectator. And that was something that was around in New York when I was doing the Twister Cup for the PC guys. They would totally always have their hit point pools up the top, the combined hit point pools of both teams. And now you can see that. So if you're watching a tournament match online and you're in the spectator or you're live streaming it, you'll see not just how many tanks are left, but how many hit points both sides have, which was pretty cool, I think. I really think that was a necessary change, and it improves the viewer experience. If you're looking at it, it adds a certain rich element of desperation when you see the hit point pools dropping down, and gives another whole facet to the gameplay for hit point sharing, specifically with teams. There you go. That's a quick overview of what was going on in patch 3.7 and the things that you really, really needed to look at. Just another thing, and I'm not sure if they've addressed this, and a lot of people don't realize this, but there's been a bit of a bug with the American tanks and their impenetrable gun mantlets. Shake my head, good mate, patron. He's a New Zealander, but we won't hold that against him. He did some testing in training rooms with the T29, the T95, T32, and found that firing heat while face hugging, you could just, with certain guns, you could go straight through the gun mantlet, which was very, very interesting and should not happen. Now, I haven't road tested that, but if you want to jump in a training room and road test it, I'll be doing it later today. And let me know the results. Post them up down there in the comments section. Make sure you like the channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and give us a heads up if you have anything interesting. It's going to be a lot more live streaming coming this week. We are going to make it happen. My net has been precluding me from doing that, and my bloody internet, Australia, the tyranny of distance is a horrible thing. The sooner I get the national broadband network hooked up, the better off I'll be. But I'll be attempting to make streaming love at 1.8 megabytes per second upload in the very, very near future. Until next time, I'm Bushka on Blitz. Look after yourselves and stay safe on the battlefield.